Well, hello everyone. It's a nice Sunday afternoon, and the weather is really great. So I wanted to check in and give you some more information as we move to week two and we get moving a little bit faster and jump into things a little bit more. It looks like everybody did a pretty good job the first week. If you still have questions, need help with anything, don't hesitate to ask about that. We're still talking about joining the conversation, the writing studies conversation, talking about what is writing studies, trying to give you a little bit of a foundation so that things will make sense as we continue to move forward. Writing studies is a big field, it's a big area, and it covers so many things. So, we'll cover a lot of stuff. Don't feel like you have to, be an expert at everything or understand everything we talk about because there's just so many different ways we can look at this conversation of what is writing studies. So I wanted to kind of go over, kind of review and show you, what we're going to try to get started in week two. I've put together some information about the Review, Discuss, Connect. That has to do with the online discussions we'll have and the other things we'll do that go along with that. And then the Writing Studies Overview. And you can see this is the syllabus. And you can see those are two of the major parts of what we're doing in the class. So week two in Blackboard. Now, I wanted to say one thing just to kind of clarify, what I'm doing, kind of the method to my madness. The reason why I've only got week one and week two up at this point, it's not so much that I, need more time to get everything done or that, my organization is not the best, which either one of those definitely apply to, just nearly every day in some form. But I am a big believer in whatever group I'm working with, working and building on the context, that those learners have. What are they interested in? What is their background? What kinds of things do they, need more coverage in some areas than others? And, just where are they at this point? And how can I help learners start from where you're at, and then what's the best path to go forward. So when I asked you guys last week kind of what you're interested in, which directions you want to go, that helps me to kind of know what to focus on more than other stuff, rather than just saying, here's a list of stuff, here's what you need to know, read this and, get back to me. But I really try whatever I'm telling you that I think is a good strategy for working with learners, working with writers, are the things that I try to model and do myself. So anyway, last week the readings were due on Sunday, and that's because it was the first week. From here on out, your summaries of the readings will be due on Tuesdays. And we're going to have the online discussion groups. We're going to have one on Tuesday evening. So, hopefully that makes sense to you. You want to get the readings done, get the summaries done before we actually have the discussions. So, even though the discussions are like this week in the online discussions, we're going to discuss from week one, but in our online discussions, we very well may have some questions come up about the current readings for the current week too. So that way the readings are done, and then you can work on the rest of the stuff, and that's due by the end of the day on Sundays. Okay, so I put quite a bit of info up about the Review, Discuss, Connect, and the Writing Studies Overview, and those are found on my wiki page. I'll show you those. Review, Discuss, Connect, Writing Studies Overview. So you can read those, then post that you have reviewed the info and questions you may have. And as you have questions, I tend to use the wiki for things that I'm going to use over and over again. And we can talk more about wiki later. That's an example of digital writing and how to use online context and those kinds of things. But it's real easy if you guys have questions and there's more than I can add to clarify. So that's another way that I really try to engage with learners. Here's a way to shape this assignment, but what are the questions you have? How can I make it better? How can I make it work better for you as learners? Okay, the online discussion groups. It looks like to me Tuesday at 6 or Wednesday at 7 are the best times. And so this Tuesday at 6, I'll open up my WebEx room. Those of you that Tuesday works, we'll meet. We'll talk about the reading from last week, but you should have this week's reading done and your summaries posted as well. And here is my, let's see. Here's the address to my WebEx room. For those of you who aren't familiar with WebEx, here's my room and what it looks like. The first week, I'm sure we'll have some glitches and getting in the room and try to get things to work, but don't worry about that. We'll work on all of that. This second week will still be kind of getting things coordinated. Now, when we meet and we have the discussions, we'll do what I'm calling review, discuss, and connect. Each one of you will need to be the reviewer at least once and be the connector at least once. And I explain what those are here so you can read and get a better idea of what that is. Now this week we won't have that since we're just getting started. So I will kind of do some of that. We won't have a lot of review, but I'll kind of do some of that, sort of model that for you. That's another thing I like to do, if I'm expecting you to do something, give you some kind of model or some kind of example, some kind of practice before I expect you to, do it and do a good job on it. Now see down here, if you want to be a reviewer or connector for week 3, that would be next week. You want to post that in the Review, Discuss, Connect forum in Blackboard. Let me show you that. I moved it up here to the top because we're going to be doing this every week. So if you look under Review, Discuss, Connect, I've made these folders. So here's the week 2 discussion. So anything related to the discussion for that week, we'll put it in here. So after we have the discussion on Tuesday, you will need to post in here which discussion you attended. Like I attended the discussion on Tuesday, and in the week where you were a reviewer or a connector, you would tell me that as well. Now the points for the Review, Discuss, Connect, I think I put 140 points. So for each week, you'll get 10 points for being in the discussion. And then when you are a reviewer, you will get 20 points. When you are a connector, you will get 20 points. So that's 10 weeks of discussion at 10 points is 100 points. 20 points for being a reviewer, 20 points for being a connector, which adds up to 140 points. So you will see this this forum has 140 points that you can get. So when you look at your grade, you'll want to take that into account that you won't have all those points. And so if you look at the grade book, the total points might look a little bit off. Okay, so back to the schedule. You will also need to put in your writing studies notes. And I've discussed that here. More detail on that. But the basic idea here is every week, whatever we talk about, you'll sit down and write it all down. I don't know if I said it over here, but I would think you'd want to do at least a page a week. And then in the Blackboard discussion forum, there's a forum that says Writing Studies Overview. So every week you will post what you've written for your writing studies notes. And the idea behind this is we're talking about things in writing studies. You'll write this down to kind of help you sort of organize, discuss a little bit what we're talking about. And then when we get to the end, you'll have a document that you can use in the as you go through other courses, work on other projects. When you get to the end and you have to do the final work that you have to do to before you can graduate, this will be useful because you'll be expected to be able to talk about, what is the field of writing studies all about. And so you'll have some notes and they'll be useful. And it's a good learning tool, to write about and think about and make notes about what it is we're studying. And I think I put that one as 140 points too. Like we'll probably do it for about 10 weeks, and then midterm we'll work on it and do kind of a more formal version, and then you'll have a formal version at the end, a finished version, and those will each be worth 20 points. So again, the weekly 10 points for 10 weeks, the midterm for 20 points, and the final version for 20 points to add up to 140. There's also a handout in the course content that looks like this. I got this off of my Facebook. This is a course that Doug Hess is teaching, and he came up with some questions. So I wanted you to review that. And this is also useful. You can use this when we do the review, discuss, connect, and we have our discussions. I want you to always be asking questions, posting questions, things that we can think about. So I thought this was a really good list of questions. But I also want you to see what you can find about Douglas Hess as a writing studies scholar. Excuse me. And just share that. There's a posting for that in the discussion forum where you can post that. And then, let's see, we already went over that. The readings for this week, the Iris Ruiz, this one's in Blackboard in the course content. So anytime I talk about a file or a reading or something like that in Blackboard, it's probably going to be in this course content area. And then a link. Here's actually something that Doug Hess wrote. And then here's another reading that I really like. To, again, like I said last week, to have you think about what writing is and how I want you to think about writing, ways that you think about writing. Let's see. So those are the readings. The only other thing I was going to do in this little video for you was talk a little bit about the history of writing studies. Just kind of a quick overview, because the things we're reading and we'll be discussing talk about that. Like I said, trying to give you a context for, what is writing studies all about. Colleges and universities originally were more for the upper class, people who had the time and the money that they could go. So really, those people generally had training, so they knew how to write and communicating, and a lot of the writing they did back then was more, just writing and copying the text or the information they had, and learning that content. So really, their writing studies. There weren't classes in writing the way we know them today. It was after World War II when the people coming back from the war had the GI benefit, which would pay for education, and so a lot of the middle class and lower class that had not traditionally gone to colleges were using their GI Bills to do this, and basically the writing classes started. They called it freshman English, freshman comp. And the idea was that these people coming to college did not have the formal training in writing that they needed, and so we needed a course to basically fix them. That their writing wasn't good enough, and so that's where kind of the tradition of the way English was taught, English courses, writing courses, was this idea of correctness and correct grammar and correct form and certain formats. So that was in the late 40s and 50s. The field of writing studies really didn't even start until like the late 80s. And when it originally started, it was called rhetoric and composition, because composition was kind of the traditional term that was used. And it was mainly people who had formal study in literature studies, because that's what English degrees basically were. You studied literature and you did write, and you learned about, how to write about literature. But there hadn't really been a formal study of, writers and what do writers do, and, what would writing as a field look like. So it started out as rhetoric and composition, and it went through, in the early days, the question of, what should the field be like? What's the content of the field? A lot of people didn't feel like there was content. It was not like biology, where you've got all the basic biology principles and stuff. So that was a question. In the beginning, there were what they called cognitive studies, where they actually tried to do the scientific kind of thing, find out, are there processes in people's minds that they go through kind of in a scientific way when they write? So then, when you went through other stages, the current traditional rhetoric is that idea of correctness and focusing on correctness, and the modes of writing, like, write a compare and contrast essay or write an argument. And, a lot of the writing was research, argumentative kind of writing. And then you had, the more social approach, the people asking, okay, what about, a writer's voice? Instead of just making it all this rules driven and following these forms, we should think about writers and what do they want to say and how do they connect to the writing, kind of the social turn. And then, since then, we've had the idea of the process of writing came into play. What are the steps that writers go through? What are the steps that we can help writers with? A lot of the idea of you would do, several drafts of a paper and get feedback. But in a lot of ways, that even became kind of automatized, in that it was kind of thought, okay, here's one way to do this, and so even that was kind of limited. And then nowadays, there's so many different areas to look at and think about. Digital writing, visual rhetoric, critical race theory is a big one nowadays. Science writing, gosh, there's so many of them, and we'll talk about a lot of those, and you guys will look at a lot of that. So we're going to have the large focus where we keep talking about what is writing studies, and ways that you guys can think about joining that conversation. So we'll do that big overview, and like I said, we won't be able to talk about all the areas, but I'll try to just show you, a lot of what the current conversations are. But then you guys will kind of decide where more specifically you want to focus. So maybe, like Zoe mentioned, multilingual theories and questions related to writers and learners. Somebody else mentioned, technical writing, political writing, someone mentioned. So you guys will do a more focused study and really look more in depth at a more narrow area of the big area of writing studies. So anyway, that's the idea, and that's kind of how we've, I've tried to lay things out. So as you have, questions, please please post those. You can post those in the Review, Discuss, Connect. In the week where we're doing the discussions. So, but just let me know. And you guys are doing a great job. You're the best graduate studies class. So just don't tell the other groups that I said that. Anyway, I'll stop there, and all of this stuff we'll talk about. I'm sure I'll go over stuff more. So hang in there. We'll all get there together. Do the best you can. I'm here to help. We're all here to help each other. So I will see you guys on Tuesday at 6 in my WebEx room, or Wednesday at 7 in my WebEx room. Okay, thanks a bunch. Thanks for all the good work so far.